Hello, and welcome to another LinkedIn Live session. This event is being held as part of PwC Malta's Tech Week 2024. Joining me today are Andrew Schembri, Jake Azzopardi, and Kirsten Cremona. Last Friday, our firm held its annual digital conference at the Hilton Malta. The underlying theme for this year was AI and trust, transforming industries and shaping futures. AI has become ever more pervasive around us, and it would be safe to assume that it has become a point of discussion in every corporate boardroom at some time or another. It invariably compels business organizations to assess how to deal with AI. This is not just a matter of seeking further efficiencies and opportunities through AI. Businesses also need to address the competitive threats of having products and services that no longer remain relevant in light of what the market has come to expect. As AI continues to grow exponentially, business organizations are increasingly relying on data analytics and large data warehouses to take more timely and informed decisions. The move towards cloud technologies has also facilitated further this transition. In today's digital age, data has indeed become the new gold. Alas, this also means that business organizations are also facing increasing and evolving cyber threats, seeking to gain access to such data. Cybersecurity and data privacy has taken on a whole new meaning in the corporate boardroom, as also evidenced by the increasing number of organizations that are appointing dedicated resources to deal with information security on a full-time basis. Andrew, I'd like to start off with yourself. Maybe you could elaborate briefly on the conference itself and the key message from the initial keynote speech delivered by Darshan Chandarana, the emerging and AI lead at PwC UK.
I think the keynote speech put a lot of things in perspective, in the sense, if you look at the number of trends that Darshan highlighted in his initial session, they were all pointing in some shape or form to one direction, right? So I think that AI is obviously here to stay, but for AI to deliver its promise, there's a number of other things that organizations should be putting in place and thinking about in order to ensure the long-term sustainable value. And I think if we had to kind of summarize a lot of the key points or the key messages, I think one thing that struck with me was the fact that obviously we need to be looking, and also the trends are suggested, the market trends, that there's a push towards the cloud. And I think organizations need to continue embracing the cloud. I think even the crowd in the conference themselves highlighted the willingness to move towards the cloud, because that will become one of the enablers to allow us obviously to deploy AI at scale, give us the scalability, modularity that we need to then also derive value from the data that we need, which essentially is the key resource that nowadays organizations have in order to deliver value to their organization. So to me, the fact that we need to be looking at other trends, including cloud and AI, and obviously focus on then the value we're getting from the data, I think that is one of the key messages that struck out. Modularity is another aspect, right? So I think Darshan also highlighted a key point in terms of how we're traditionally looking at implementing systems that are meant to stay for the next 5-10 years. And I think in the case of AI, we need to be more nimble in the way we think for the next couple of months and design and implement architectures that allow modularity, so we can plug in and plug out tools as they develop and mature as we go along through our kind of business as usual. Mm-hmm. So to me, those were key messages.
Jake, you shared these particular views. You had also moderated a panel discussion sort of afterwards. Sort of what were the key messages coming out, and how do they relate to what Andrew's just said?
So in terms of the modularity, obviously with the advancement of various AI technologies over the coming years, the modularity aspect is very important, because one needs to obviously use a model one day and then the next day replace it with a better model. In terms of the panel, what came out strongly is that there is a need for governance around AI. AI traditionally, the end game is obviously trying to train a computer to do something that a human would do. Now, obviously, with that comes a lot of challenges around ethics, data privacy, and obviously responsibility in AI. What also came out from the panel is not nowadays AI with the advancement of generative AI. Obviously, it's been democratized. So before, AI traditionally with things like natural language processing, computer vision, one would need to be more of a data scientist. However, nowadays with generative AI, obviously it's more attainable and achievable by a normal human being. So obviously there needs to be not only training and upskilling from an aspect of how to use the tools, but also awareness of what to do and what not to do when using the tools. Many a time organizations don't understand that when new technologies come about, there are always the risks involved of getting it wrong. Another thing which came out is that obviously as we progress more and more, there's more upcoming regulation, and obviously companies need to ascertain that they comply with the regulations such as the EU AI Act. As well, another key point which we touched upon is obviously AI can be used for everything, but obviously one needs to understand the cost to benefit analysis. I go to a point that Dylan made on the panel where you can do 1 + 1 with AI, but it will approximate what 1 + 1 is. So it's better off using a calculator to do that. So obviously one needs to understand what and when and how to use AI to drive business benefit and deliver value in the cheapest cost possible.
And if I may, to add something on this, there's also a bit of a shift in mindset that kind of came about from that panel discussion. It's also about how do we empower and enable our staff in the business context, right, in starting to use Gen AI in a responsible way. So the fact, I think there was a point mentioned about we should entice or encourage staff to use Gen AI tools that are available at mass, but then also ensure that there's accountability frameworks and documentation of how these are being used. I think this also removes a bit the stigma of I'm shortcutting a process because I'm using a Gen AI tool to help me with defining or preparing something, right? So I think there's also a bit of this that needs to come into play.
Which, in a way, also then brings into play the second key point of the conference, which is all about trust. Maybe, Kirsten, for the benefit of our viewers, what do we mean by trust, and you know, sort of what are the key messages that came out?
Looking back a bit at the conference, we had an individual with us, a guest speaker from our PwC Threat Intelligence team, global team, who is heading the EMEA region, and obviously he brings a wealth of experience in a lot of the different threat activities, the cyber landscape, and obviously that all puts pressure onto the trust. And I think the keynote of Matt Carey kind of showed us how fragile trust can be. To answer your question, I mean, what is trust? I mean, trust is a big word, and we use it perhaps a bit too much sometimes, freely. I mean, trust, especially in the digital context, is about that confidence in your security posture to start with, right? Because sometimes I think we are also overconfident in the security posture that we have and the controls that we put in place. So having the confidence that we're doing things properly, right? We're looking at everything that we should be looking at in terms of then securing our systems and data, okay, bringing that in, and that also gives us confidence that the data that we're processing, the data that we are storing for the end customer. Because at the end of the day, customers and clients look up to each service organization to ensure that, that it is being done in a transparent and an ethical manner. We're talking about the newest type of AI technology, Gen AI. Again, that also is putting strain, I would say, on digital trust. In fact, in his keynote, Matt also pointed out now the widespread abuse of Gen AI technologies. So we're talking about how Gen AI is being used effectively to streamline operations, to increase efficiency, productivity.
It's also the downside.
Yeah, but like any technology, since I think humans were around, can be abused, right? And now we're also seeing how threat actors are creating variations of ChatGPT, for example, to accelerate the malware development, to perform disinformation campaigns, which is also fueled by the geopolitical tensions that are all around us. So, yes, I mean, trust is a big word, and I think as time passes and as technologies are emerging, I think the concept of upholding trust in all that we do is key. And I think that's going to differentiate between the successful organizations. So it's not just about the adoption of the emerging tech and how you use data, but also showing how you're using it in a trustful manner. And I think that is key. We also had a panel discussion that showed kind of even use cases of how technology, other types of technologies can be used to create these trusted collaboration and supply chains. Alistair Castillo from Elita also pointed out kind of a couple of use cases of how IoT, Internet of Things, can also be used to promote trust, right? As part of the supply chain, as part of the delivery of products and services. So we also need to look at how technology that we have available today can help us maintain and increase trust. Okay, not just worrying about the security and the privacy matters around the technology itself, but using technology as a tool in itself.
Jake, Kirsten referred to use cases. Care to sort of describe a bit some of the use cases in action that were sort of demonstrated last week?
During the conference, we demonstrated a couple of use cases with generative AI. The first one was utilizing the Microsoft Azure AI services, where a model was trained on internal data in order to develop a proposal for grant for EU funding. Now, obviously, traditionally, to develop such a grant proposal, one would have to do several hours of research, several hours of drafting, etc. However, this Gen AI model, what it basically did was utilized our company's internal information, and within a matter of minutes, it produced the various sections of a grant proposal. So obviously, this shows that Gen AI can reduce the process of such from several hours to a number of minutes. However, that being said, it isn't 100% complete, this. And one might say, so what is the point of using it? The point is that obviously it's better than starting from a blank canvas. And as well, it's also important to note that when utilizing such tools, obviously the first draft that will come out will be 60, 70%, potentially even 50%. But it's better than 0% from a blank canvas. Obviously, one then needs to refine either through prompting properly and updating the prompts to update the draft. Another use case that we shared was for an HR function. Now, HR functions are well known to receive a lot of queries, be it on leave, sick leave, overtime entitlement, etc. And obviously, these are emails received in someone's inboxes, various inboxes. As well, people need to take the time to reply to them, and obviously, as humans, we all reply in a different way, so it's always subject to human error and interpretation. In this use case, what we demonstrated was that by uploading the staff handbook, one can have a conversation interface with the Gen AI tool, prompt it with any question it has, and with a matter of seconds, receive an answer. So obviously, traditionally, that is speeding up a process and also saving time from someone having to reply, and obviously a user gets more information in an agile manner. Obviously, that type of use case is transferable, so whilst it worked for HR, it can also work for contact centers. So think about it like this. Nowadays, people call up a contact center. Hopefully, if you are lucky, you're first in the queue, or you get someone directly, but traditionally, you always have to wait. Now, obviously, humans get impatient waiting. With such tools, you don't have to wait anymore. You have a response directly. So The thing about utilizing such tools in such scenarios is they even improving and enhancing the user experience. So it's not only operation efficiency and reducing costs of time to reply, etc., but also the experience of getting that answer and talking to something or someone, if you want to say that, of Gen AI, in a real-time manner is fascinating.
I think one of the key takeaway points is that one can look at use cases, but at the end of the day, every business organization is going to have its own unique use case because at the end of the day, AI is based on data. Data is your own organization. It's up to each organization to be looking at where it can be finding those sort of niche opportunities to.
It was also one of the keynote messages, right, about identifying potential use cases, go with a proof of concept, and then once you convince the business that something, that's when you try to scale based on ensuring that you have the right data and the right governance structures in place. So it's also.
I mean, one key takeaway is don't apply AI for the sake of applying AI because it's cool or sexy. Look at the use case and see, does AI make sense to be applied to that use case? Many a time organizations want to use AI, so they will use it for things, and sometimes, or many a time, they're not using it in the most efficient way. And obviously, and we touched upon this, AI is based on cloud. Obviously, cloud comes at a cost, and obviously, if you don't use AI for the right thing, you're going to receive, at the end of the month, quite a nice invoice from a cloud service provider.
Which in a way ties into the point that I was going to refer to, Kirsten. AI is based on data. Data needs that infrastructure. So that was also a debate that we went into to be looking at sort of cloud, hybrid, on-premise. We also had the participant of Microsoft and Oracle representatives. What, in your view, were the key messages coming across?
Mm-hmm. No, I think even if we had to launch actually that question to the audience as well, in kind of picking a bit their brains on what the intent is for the next couple of years, whether they are going to keep themselves on a hybrid setup, if they are, again, I think most of the audience were on that setup, who is transitioning more onto the cloud, right, or who's staying on-prem. And I think, unsurprisingly, the trend is that as time passes, organizations are shifting more onto the cloud, and there's a reason for it, right? There's a reason because the cloud provides at a scalable level a lot of features, functionality, and the capability of using data in a much better way than if you were to invest or rather invest in an on-prem type of setup. I think it's very difficult to compare. Even the access to the Gen AI features, right? Again, if you want the latest and greatest type of Gen AI technologies, you need to be on the cloud. Maybe it doesn't mean you need all your environment on the cloud, but then again, there is, let's say, a big advantage of having your whole infrastructure on the cloud, because then you don't have siloed data, right, in different places, because the power of Gen AI is actually having everything in one place that can be tapped into. And apart from this major advantage, that is also a recent advantage, it's less than 2 years, right, where we've been talking about Gen AI. I think there are also other points when it comes to cloud that shouldn't be kind of forgotten. For example, I think both Oracle and Microsoft representatives mentioned that with cloud, you're getting, an environment that is first and foremost based on security first principles, right? So you still meet the occasional IT professionals who are a bit wary of the data security on the cloud because they're losing the control. Obviously, the governance still stays with the organization, but at the end of the day, the implementation of controls, I don't think it can be matched with the hyperscalers of the world. So the security that's being provided by the cloud vendors, I think it's very difficult to compare, as well as the compliance side. Because if I have an organization that I need to be compliant with a number of different regulations, one cloud environment is already built with compliance in mind, and think it was the Oracle representative who mentioned that obviously their OCI infrastructure is kind of already aligned with numerous standards and different regulations, both in the EU and in the US. So it's easy for service organizations to onboard. I think the last point that is also exciting is the use of Gen AI to accelerate the, let's say, or shorten the gap of security professionals going into the security operations type of work. There's a skill shortage at the moment, so with Gen AI technologies like Microsoft Security Copilot, you can have someone who is inexperienced, someone coming out fresh from university, and within a couple of weeks they're already well suited to be analyzing for threats, responding to incidents, all thanks to a prompt-based interface, which helps them get up to speed with their security skills. I think that's fascinating, and again, is going to cut down quite drastically the time to upskill.
In fact, this was also a theme picked up then in a separate session where we're talking about competency-based organizations and how Gen AI can be sort of very much fast-tracking the
if I
adoption
can add
process.
to the agility side, so one thing that's beautiful about cloud is traditionally on-premise, you have to get the boxes, set them up, configure them, and then support them. That obviously takes time. With cloud, from an agility now, Kirsten mentioned the agility of security. From a business agility, things like Oracle and Microsoft, you can just deploy a service with a model that's deployed automatically, train it, and within a couple of days or weeks, have an application ready. Whereas on-prem scenario, traditionally, would take you several months to do. So I think cloud not only has, from a security benefit, having security by design, but also from a business perspective, the agility that it offers and the efficiencies to the operation, I think is second to none.
If I may add something, because obviously we're speaking about AI, so more the business enablement, right? Getting value from technology, and there's the trust side, which is somewhat synonymous with the controls or the risk management side. I have a different view of what trust is. It's also an enabler and giving us value to also go to market. But I think the conversation between on-prem, hybrid, cloud is obviously very dependent on the organization. We know organizations have to have some element of on-prem because of their OT or operational technology, right? They need low latency, whatever it may be, so they need to have an element of on-prem. It doesn't mean that for certain use cases, for certain components of their infrastructure, they cannot start transitioning over to a cloud, and therefore where the hybrid model comes into play. I think one thing we mentioned, I think most of organizations usually speak about also the hidden costs of cloud, right? That in the long term, potentially you end up paying more. I think we do that obviously by comparing the tangible stuff. So you're comparing the purchasing of a box and the renting of a room with the cost that you get from your hyperscalers. But then there's the hidden things like, okay, if you need to have, because you operate in certain industry, your environment ISO certified, no one is measuring the people you need to have employed to manage that certification, the processes you need to have in place. So there are these hidden benefits that you get obviously by going for one of the hyperscalers and other, to be honest, co-location facilities, whatever they may be. So there are different setups, but I think what we're saying is to deploy certain technologies at scale, you need to also be looking at infrastructure in a more long-term vision in terms of how you can scale up and be able to be agile in terms of the compute and the resources that you may need from time to time. So I think that is one of the key aspects to keep in mind.
And as well, the economies of scale come in from the point of to do AI on-prem, it's possible. However, the amount of resources, financial, people, etc., that you would require, I mean, there are only several organizations that come in mind, and that's why they're the largest of the largest companies globally, but even then they are using the cloud for AI, or else if you're a military. But I mean, even military organizations are moving to the cloud. So over there it is, if you would like to use AI, I think your safest bet is, deploy it on the cloud, because not only from a business agility, but I think we can all agree from a security, etc., it makes the most sense.
just I think Kirsten mentioned the point, the governance on the cloud and the relationship and the responsibilities between the cloud service provider, depending on the cloud model that you deliver model, right? So there are things that organizations should be aware of, that because you're having your environment hosted on the cloud doesn't mean that you're hands off. There's other things that comes into play. But I think these are all things that you can manage with the third party who is providing you those services. But it's important to understand that the responsibilities are not being shifted.
Sure.
They are being perhaps changed into something which is more
things
governance
like
focused.
governance and data
governance
privacy,
becomes more prominent.
So
Matt Carey mentioned a point on this, to make sure that if you have the right clauses in the contracts in place when you use cloud.
Okay, we're coming to the close of this session. Some, sort of key parting takeaway that sort of struck you in terms of, Andrew, you had also done, the concluding remarks. Any nuggets of information
we mentioned,
I haven't yet mentioned?
We mentioned a lot of things I was gonna say, but I think to me, it really struck me what the panel on AI said in terms of how we can democratize the tool, right? At the end of the day, it's a tool. And I think with everything, there's always risk. But I think those things that present the higher risk also present the higher reward. So what can we do? What can we put in place to govern, manage that risk so that we can reap the rewards without the downside of risk? And to me, I think starting to change the mindset and the culture within organization about adopting AI at scale, maybe with small use cases to build the confidence, is where we should be going towards. In the process, there's other things like frameworks, like regulations, like the AI Act, I think. There was also a very good session about that from two of our lawyers. So I think that the trust side will be somewhat coming into place because of this regulatory frameworks coming up and the expectations of people who are using these technologies, that they are expecting this element of trust. Right? Exactly. So to me then is so that will come into play. So let's start thinking about strategies of how we want as an organization to make use of AI so that we don't fall behind, because the alternative is that you don't embark on this journey, but you're going to be missing out. So I think that
into play then things like the data strategy.
Exactly. So we need to be looking at this at a bit of a wider angle, and obviously make sure that you're not missing out. So that to me is the key message for me, at least. From that.
Jake, anything else?
Further to what Andrew said, I think the awareness in organizations and society, upskilling, that obviously people need to understand it. It's like the internet, and when a computer came in, I think we can potentially safely say that AI is now here to stay over the coming years. I think people need to learn how to adopt it, adapt it, and use it to assist, in their everyday tasks. Obviously, there is the whole notion that, yes, AI will replace people and will replace jobs. However, I don't think that, personally speaking, it will. It might in certain industries. I think we need to adapt it and adopt it and, utilize it to the best of our capabilities.
No, as a parting comment, I'll take kind of the message that Dylan on your panel kind of mentioned.
Professor Dylan Seikel.
Professor Dylan Seikel, yes. And how he kind of approaches this Gen AI problem, right? Because it's also a problem from academia side in a sense. There's the threats and the opportunities, like always. But he did mention kind of how he promotes the use of Gen AI in an accountable manner. And I think the accountability, pairing it with the trust, is what is key. So that means, let's encourage as well our employees to use it responsibly, and document how they're using it. Because Jake mentioned this, why do we want to start from a blank canvas, right? When we can already start painting, from 60%, 70% there, right? Dylan said it's not cheating, so I think we want to encourage the use of Gen AI.
Point taken. Andrew, Jake, Kirsten, thank you very much for your time today, and to our viewers, I hope you enjoyed this brief debate on AI and trust, and please do reach out to us should you have any queries. Thank you.